So with the revelations coming out of the Epstein documents that have been released, there is now a slew of conversations and questions that are now being brought up to light. Things that we thought in the past that were correct that maybe we're wrong about, maybe that we need to rethink things, maybe we need to further investigate things that, were kind of a shut case because they didn't want to reveal certain information. As I've stated, this is one of the reasons why the Epstein documents and the files being released so vitally important to someone like me, because it does answer a lot of these questions. What happened to childhood stars? What's happening to missing children that we can't account for? What if Michael Jackson, the late king of pop, was actually the canary in the coal mine? Remember those details in the 2000s when they accused Michael Jackson of, raping children? What if he was actually the savior of said kids, protecting people who actually did the abuse on children? Well, that is what's now being speculated as these Epstein documents are being released. And maybe that the late king of pop that unfortunately died in 2009 definitely deserved an apology. That's what's now being revealed, folks. So to show people this, let's go back a bit. This is from Rolling Stone. This is published back in 2019. Michael Jackson child sexual abuse allegations, a timeline. It's been 25 years since sex molestation allegations broke about the king of pop. So this was early 2000s. Okay? So this was the early 2000s where, all the tabloids, all the newspapers, everybody was concerned that, Michael Jackson, who rose to fame as a child singer, or the Jackson 5, then went on his own and became a successful musician, one of the greatest talented artists of a generation. I still listen to his music. I still bust a move when Smooth Criminal's on. I'm not ashamed to admit that. We were told all these disturbing things, these allegations that never really carried on once Michael Jackson unfortunately passed. Now, all these allegations that we thought were very severe, terrible, because we didn't know at the time. We didn't know about, people like Jeffrey Epstein, all these, sycophant behind the scenes that, we just assumed. He assumed that the allegations were onto something because that's what we were told. That's what we were to believe. But what if Michael Jackson saw what was happening in the Epstein resorts and the island, was invited there, and was so terrified of the upbringing in this industry, just like we saw with other individuals? What if Michael Jackson was the canary in coal mine to say, I'm going to protect children from these monsters, the monsters that are accusing me of these allegations? So here's a bit of a breakdown of this. I'm not going to read through all of this, but Rolling Stone says the most talked about movie at the Sundance Film Festival, which is currently underway in Park City, Utah, was a 2-part 4-hour documentary detailing disturbing allegations of child sex abuse brought against the late king of pop, Michael Jackson. Leaving Neverland focuses on the stories of two men, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, who were befriended by Jackson as kids and were among his most staunch defenders when child molestation accusations were raised in 1993 and 2003. It wasn't until several years after Jackson's death in 2019 that each came forward with their own claims of being abused by the pop star and sued the singer's estate. Set to air this spring on HBO, Leaving Neverland exposes the encouraging details of the alleged abuse that Robson and Safechuck said they endured for years, corroborating with interviews with the family members and other loved ones. The approach effective. When a Rolling Stone editor attended a screening, he described the audience as dealing with PTSD of their own. During a 10-minute intermission, audience members appeared slightly dazed, he wrote. By the end of the screen, the crowd looked completely Shocked. And again, this is back in the 2000s where we did not know these, the island. We didn't know anything about the whole trafficking network that was aligned to the music industry that promoted people like Michael Jackson. We didn't know about the system at the time. So, of course, people are going to walk into Leaving Neverland with these allegations thinking how horrific it was. And this has been the talk for many, many years. They made jokes about this. All the late night comics, everybody picked on Michael Jackson because of these allegations. But what if we were all wrong? And what if Michael Jackson actually was saving the children from far worse abuse that he himself endured all these years? So, this account here, Max Pien, I think that's how you say it, Max Pien. An audio has been verified as authentic, a real phone conversation between Michael Jackson and his former manager, Dieter Wisner, where Jackson was saying plainly, "There's a group of people who want to get rid of me. They don't want me here anymore. It's more than the government. It's bigger than the government. They can make it seem like I took my own life. They can make it seem like I overdosed on drugs." And you remember 2009, the news that broke that Michael Jackson died of overdose. And it was because of a doctor who wrongfully prescribed Michael Jackson. He was taking tranquilizers to fall asleep. And when I heard this news, I didn't know about the tranquilizers at the time. I just heard that it was an overdose and just, again, assumed that, that's Hollywood. These are actors and actresses. They just overdose because, they party too much. And sometimes they do. Sometimes that's the case. Well, with Michael Jackson, this in particular was very interesting because Michael Jackson took so many tranquilizers just to fall asleep. And I don't know about you, but I can't imagine someone taking that many tranquilizers to fall asleep if they're just a normal person. And if they haven't, discovered something horrific, staunching, gut-wrenching, that they need that many prescriptions, that they need a doctor to prescribe tranquilizers just for you to fall asleep, just for you to close your eyes and fall asleep. That takes some serious trauma, ladies and gentlemen. And this is the thing that Michael Jackson and many people defending Michael Jackson was trying to warn people. But of course, we did not listen because they were cut out, and we were filled with this noise about the allegations. But here is this audio clip that is now trending with the Epstein file release. Listen to this phone call that Michael Jackson has with his manager. Is it manager or his former manager after Michael Jackson was invited to Epstein Island after what he saw on this island. Listen to the phone conversation that Michael Jackson had with his former manager about being on this island and how disturbing it was. Listen to this.
I don't know if I should tell you this, but I don't know who may be listening. There may be a group of people that want to get rid of me. They don't want me here anymore.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
So Michael Jackson is saying there's people that don't want me here anymore. They don't want me to be alive because of after what I've witnessed, what I've saw, and what I dealt with. They're afraid that I'm going to reveal something about this. I'm going to expose a lot of this. And the former manager says, well, what do you mean by this? What do you mean? You're the king of pop. You're the most famous entertainer in the world. You're the most famous entertainer of a generation. Why would you say that these people want to kill you? Who wants to kill you? Well, listen to this.
I
Talk to me.
I can't talk about it over the phone. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just feel in my soul, only God knows, they could shoot me. They could stab me. They could frame me and say I overdosed you with drugs. They can do.
So he's saying that they could stab him, they can frame me, they can say that I overdosed on drugs, which 2009, that's what happened. The news report that came out, Michael Jackson OD'd on drugs, exactly as he's describing in this phone call, after visiting Jeffrey Epstein's island with other celebrities. They're afraid of Jeffrey Epstein and company are afraid of Michael Jackson. They're afraid of this guy because Michael Jackson, again, started as a child star, went through the same traumas as many other child stars. You look at, the Jackson 5 and Joe Jackson, who was the father, did some awful, disgusting, disparaging things to his own kids. Obviously, Michael Jackson went through trauma, went through a lot of these horrific instances. So this is painful for him. And they're afraid that Michael Jackson, being the biggest entertainer that people love and support and listen to his music, again, I still listen to his music all the time, is going to reveal this, is going to expose all the horrific, evil things that are going behind the scenes of the music industry, of entertainment, of Hollywood, of all these monsters. Back in the 2000s, I think this is a month before his death. I can't remember the exact timing of this, but this is around that time. Here's some more.
Who could do these things?
It's not the government.
It's not the government. It's more than the government.
But I don't know how to do it.
I don't know how to do it. I don't care.
I don't even care my life anymore. I just want my dream.
I don't care about my life. I don't care about my life anymore. I just want my dream. That's what he's confessing to his former manager after being on this island. He's terrified. You can hear it in his voice. He's terrified. If Michael Jackson is panicking after being on this island, God knows what was going on when all these people were vacationing on the island. That's what makes this so sinister. And that's why we need to hold people, even if they didn't actually commit the atrocities and abuses on minors and children, even if they weren't part of the, trafficking network, that even the celebrities that were just visiting the island, just snorkeling and enjoying the sun rays, they need to be investigated. Because Michael Jackson, who, again, got all these allegations, was made fun of, why would he be so terrified in a phone call to tell his former manager that he doesn't want to live anymore? He's afraid that someone's going to go after him, and that all he wants is his dream to come out. Why would you be so terrified just going to an island? So what happened on Jeffrey Epstein's island is got to be the most terrifying. Again, I hate using this word, but it's the only way to describe it. Satanic. Got to be the most satanic, evil shit you can imagine. For Michael Jackson, who had all these allegations, to be this terrified in a phone call.
My angels.
Because I want to be saved.
Michael.
He goes, Michael. So the farm manager is trying to calm him down. because he doesn't know what's going on. He's just thought, okay, Jeffrey Epstein is a guy from, New York, from the Dalton School. He's a financier. He's dumb as a stump, but apparently he has all this money. He's just inviting, famous people to the island just, for vacay. Why are you so petrified, Michael? Why is this happening? Because Michael saw. He saw with his own eyes. This is like Tom Cruise in Eyes Wide Shut. He saw what was happening and was so petrified to tell anybody because he knew if he leaked out the information, his life was in danger. And Michael Jackson, who has already been through trauma his entire life, this is all catching up to him. That's why he's petrified. That's why he befriended a bunch of kids to protect them from people like Jeffrey Epstein and company. Here's some more interesting stuff. So this is a little news piece here. It says Macaulay Culkin. So you remember Macaulay Culkin, child star of Home Alone. He was good friends with Michael Jackson. And Macaulay Culkin, just like many other kids, actually went to Michael Jackson's defense. And I remember Macaulay Culkin was on Joe Rogan a while back and spoke highly about Michael Jackson. How this guy that was defamed and said that, he was abusing these kids. No, he didn't. He was actually protecting us from the abusers. And now here's a little news clip here explaining this.
Michael Jackson used his life to protect children, yet was misunderstood by the world as a criminal. Neverland, this mysterious place, was not as simple as the outside world thought. Recently, a previously undisclosed truth was revealed. In Neverland, Michael Jackson shielded children from the forces of darkness, keeping them away from the terrifying reality of Epstein's Island. He provided children with a sanctuary, protecting them from harm and abuse, yet was misrepresented by the media and the public as a criminal. He was falsely accused of abuse, while the real abusers remained undisclosed. Macaulay Culkin and other celebrities publicly defended Jackson, proving that he was not only a musical genius, but also a hero who fought for the safety and protection of children. He not only protected children from physical harm, but also helped celebrities like Britney Spears, offering her advice when she faced control from her father, protecting her freedom. Today, as more truths are revealed, we can finally see Michael Jackson for who he truly was, a hero who sacrificed for others.
Wow. So, 17 years later, since 2009, correct me if I'm wrong, not a mathematician. 17 years later, after the death of Michael Jackson, now we're finally coming to terms that he was actually the good one. He was actually the good one. And his death is that much tragic, not just to fans who enjoyed his music, but tragic because of the behind the curtain, behind the scenes, the horrific, the just traumatic worlds that we live in because of people like Jeffrey Epstein and the associates connected to this. The whole entire system that's so deeply corroded. And here's another thing that I don't think people, again, I didn't know about certain things like this. I just assumed. Because, again, early 2000s, I would have been, in grade school. I wouldn't know anything about all these, Jeffrey Epstein and, this pedo island. I wouldn't know anything about this. I just assumed. Because that's what the news is saying. Of course, why would the news ever lie to me? I was the old me. Until you realize that everything's kind of a lie. That we live in a manufactured world. That it's more than just the Matrix. And you get stuff like this. You get all this revealing information to realize, holy crap. We should have actually paid attention to Michael Jackson. That maybe he was actually on the right side of things. Maybe everything that we've been told about these certain celebrities, how awful and disparaging, was to cover up from the actual awful celebrities. So, Uncommon Sense says in 1993, Michael Jackson wrote a song called Palestine Don't Cry. His Jewish producers, Sony Records, would not let him release it. When was Michael Jackson first accused of child sex abuse? 1993. Coincidence? Coincidence? Who accused him? A failed Jewish dentist, Evan Chandler, on behalf of his son. The psychiatrist that interviewed the young supposed molested boy, Richard Gardner, Jewish. Now, I'm going to be fair. And every time they say the word Jewish, I'm going to assume that it means Zionist, because Jewish people, I know Jewish people. There's certain Jewish people that I know that would not go down this road. They would not go down to this level. So my understanding is that every time you hear someone mentions Jewish, you assume that they mean Zionist, because this would be the behavior of a Zionist maniac. That, hey, a famous pop star that's singing about supporting Palestinians as just human beings, we're going to diminish his reputation by ousting him with these fake allegations and wreck his entire career. That would be something a Zionist would do, not a Jewish person. So anytime you hear a Jew, they say Jewish, I'm going to infer that it's Zionist. That's what I'm coming with. The press that defamed him, Zionist. His sister, LaToya Jackson, said the allegations are true, only to later in life admit that her Zionist husband was beating her and told her to do it. Michael Jackson was never convicted of any wrongdoing. They suck. They're like leeches. It's a conspiracy. The Zios do it on purpose, Michael Jackson said. So, and there's some writings that Michael Jackson put together. There's the lyrics to the song that was supposed to be released in 1993, but Sony Records, who were owned by Zionists, did not want this song to be released. And that was around the same time that all of a sudden, Michael Jackson, the king of pop, that these record producers have capitalized on for many years, all of a sudden came out with these allegations. So, again, this is where it gets very interesting. Now you get all these questions and bring up, past instances where you thought one thing, and now you have to rethink everything because of what Epstein Files is teaching us, what, COVID taught to us about how the government's deceiving, how we're being lied to on record over and over and over again, how all these different industries, from pharmaceuticals to entertainment to sports to everything has been manufactured to lie and deceive you. And where someone like me has to come out and point this at to people, because they're not going to get it from the news networks. They're not going to get this information. They're going to be lying to you, and they're going to assume that you're too much of a sheep. You're too much of an idiot to do your own research. They told people not to do their own research, and you're just going to fall into line like the useful idiots, the cows that they expect you to be. But I'm not a cow. I'm an individual. I'm a person with a brain. And now, understanding the Epstein Files and understanding all this, I had now concluded that there's a lot more to this story than just Jeffrey Epstein collecting young girls and boys to the island. And now this has been going on for decades. Decades. I know this because of books like Whitney Webb published. I knew this beforehand. But now this has been a revelation. We have to ask these questions about, Michael Jackson, Britney Spears, the entire child entertainment industry. We got to ask these questions now because of what the files have now uncovered and revealed. That's why they want to keep this under wraps. That's why there's still millions of documents that they are trying to keep undercover, because it reveals so much. Here's Michael Jackson back when he was alive, and Concerned Citizen So it turns out the people that accused Michael Jackson of abusing children were actually the ones themselves abusing children. Wild. Yeah, that's projection. So they were the ones committed the crime that they accused Michael Jackson of committing because they want to silence Michael Jackson for revealing what was the darkness in the entertainment industry, and B, he was writing a song about Palestine. And being that the record producers were Zionists, they didn't want that. They didn't like that idea. They didn't like the idea that a popular entertainer actually had sympathy for people in Palestine. So here's him in a short little interview on Fox News. This is what he said.
And reading the Bible, learning about God, Jesus, love. Jesus said, bring on the children, imitate children, be like little children, and to take care of others, to take care of old people. When I see children, I see the face of God. That's why I love them so much. That's what I see. I love to do things for children, and I try to imitate Jesus. And I'm not saying I am Jesus. I'm not saying
We're clear on that.
Right. I'm trying to imitate Jesus in the fact that he said to be like children, to love children, to be as pure as children, and to make yourself as innocent and see the world through eyes of wonderment and the whole magical quality of it all. And I love that. And we were raised with those values. Those are very important values, and my family and I, we were raised with those values, and they continue strong in us today. If I can open my gates, and those gates open, and that bliss, an explosion of screaming and laughter from the children, and they run past the bridge, they run on the rides.
I don't know about you, but that sounds a little more promising and, lighter than, hey, we're going to take your kid to a mysterious island, provide them a modeling contract, but first, give us a few massages. Maybe for me and my creepy friends over here. Just saying. Here's also this too. So, remember Corey Feldman? Corey Feldman, who starred in The Goonies and as a child star and spoke out about child abuse and the Hollywood industry, and then he was blacklisted because he spoke out the truth about it. Here's Business Insider reminding us Goonies actor Corey Feldman came to Michael Jackson's defense after leaving Neverland, accused the singer of being a PDF file. So, Corey Feldman, Macaulay Culkin, a lot of these child actors and actresses who befriended Michael Jackson came to his defense because Michael Jackson actually treated them like children and not abusing them like animals in these trafficking networks that Jeffrey Epstein, aligned with the record producers, aligned with the entire industry, is forcing these young kids into. And that's why a lot of these young kids come out the way they do. That's why they get all messed up. And now I feel bad. All the years that we made fun of people for going cuckoo bananas on screen and screaming, I feel bad. I feel awful because those are victims. Those are victims of the psychotic mind control, the psychotic perverted pervasiveness of the entire industry. After what we've seen with the Jeffrey Epstein files, after everything we've seen with Quiet on Set, after everything that's been revealed, no doubt, I have a lot of questions about certain instances. I have a lot of questions when it comes to JonBenet Ramsey, because JonBenet Ramsey, remember that suspicious cold case? Remember the young starlet that was doing pageantries and then died, and no one knew exactly who killed her? They suspected it was the parents. I now have some questions because that also got revealed in the Jeffrey Epstein files. I now have questions about that. I have questions about other child stars. I have questions about why Nickelodeon and Disney have not had major lawsuits against them. I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of conspiracies. I have a lot of speculations that need to be resolved, that need to be answered. And I know that sounds like a conspiracy nut. That sounds crazy for me to speculate. But once you reveal this information, yeah, people are going to have questions and concerns. And they're going to look at things differently than they thought they were. That's, again, it's so, that's why this is so important. And people dismissing, the Epstein files as like, oh, boring. Oh, it's boring that a trafficking network of underage people, underage victims. Oh, it's so boring. It's boring because you're trying to cover up something. It's boring because you don't understand the relevance of this and why it's so important, because it reveals a lot of the things outside of Jeffrey Epstein that we did not know about, that we've been lied to, that we've been manipulated to, that actually reveals something much worse. That Michael Jackson was actually the lone canary in the coal mine protecting us from the music industry that were the sick, satanic PDF files that they accused Michael Jackson of being. There's Azania, says the whole world owes Michael Jackson an apology. He created Neverland for kids, not to grape them, but to protect them from PDF files like Epstein. Instead, media sold us propaganda that he was sleeping with these kids, that he never did. The never was actually an affirmation. Go figure. And here's something else I want to add. This is a different instance. This isn't Michael Jackson, but again, this kind of relates to the whole situation and why this all needs to be brought to the spotlight, and people have to understand how sick and awful this industry is. So in 1983, this is under an article from Wikipedia. It says Spiritual America. It says in November 1983, Prince. Remember Prince? Again, I like Prince's music. But listen to this. Prince, along with then-girlfriend Kimberly Fine, opened a short-lived art gallery named Spiritual America in New York's Lower East Side. The only initial exhibit was a photograph of the same name, which was a photograph by one of Gary Gross's photos of 10-year-old Brooke Shields standing naked in a bathtub, displayed a cheap gold frame. Prince himself referred to the image as an extremely complicated photo of a naked girl who looks like a boy made up to look like a woman. I'm sorry, what? So, Brooke Shields, famous actress Brooke Shields, at 10 years old, was photographed naked by this guy, Gary Gross. Great name, by the way. Perfect name for this sick, twisted piece of crap. Was naked. Photographed naked. And then that photograph was put on display in the Lower East Side of New York City, one of the biggest museums, for an exhibit. A 10-year-old child being displayed in a museum in New York City. And that Prince referred to this image as extremely complicated. Extremely complicated photo of a naked girl who looks like a boy made up to look like a woman. I mean, how much more child abuse could that be? That you photographed an underage girl at 10 years old. You put that photograph on display for the entire general public to see in a museum, and that Prince is commenting, saying that this naked girl looks like a boy dressed up as to be a woman. How much more child abuse can you get than this? How much more? And this is okay. This apparently was okay. And it's amazing that people will defend this and say, well, again, it's back in the day. It was the 80s. Like, there was crazy stuff. Are you kidding me? Are you friggin' kidding me? At 10 years old. 10 years old! And I'm sure this perverted asshole, this Gary Gross, gotta be 40s, 50s. Way too disturbing to have a photograph of a naked girl being presented in a museum. Unbelievable. The gallery had another show. So underneath it says the gallery had another show entitled Pop. Though the contents of both this exhibit and the closing of the gallery sometime later remain uncertain. Really? It remained uncertain that they closed down a gallery showcasing a 10-year-old Brooke Shields naked in a bathtub? I don't even have the words. And I know there's going to be some people that say, well, technically it's art. And art is supposed to be subjective. And art is the eye of the beholder. And oh my God, people are going to have different interpretations. There's a limit. Okay? Taking a photograph of a 10-year-old child to put on display so grown adults make these comments, absurd comments about this photograph is absurd. Okay? That is disgusting. So it's not just music. It's not just TV shows. It's a lot of these industries. Which again, why reveal back to the meme that I created. I go back to this. The Epstein files. That's what people are seeing. But what it actually reveals when people actually look into this is knowing that child rape, money laundering, and Satanist rituals is what keeps them afloat. What keeps the elites afloat. This is why they have power over us. This is why. And I'm starting to believe that the only reason that they're allowing the Epstein files to be released is because they know they got you already. They already got your information. They already got your biometrics. They know you're not going to revolt. They already got so many people distracted on other things like, oh my God, Bad Bunny performing at the Super Bowl. Oh my God, we got to comment like crazy on this, but nothing about this. Nothing about a 10-year-old child being exploited in 1983 that no one was held account for. Or the fact that Michael Jackson died by the hands of people that were abusing children, and Michael Jackson was actually saving those children. Nothing about that. Nothing about the fact that our entire way of life has been manipulated. And this has become a full revolution. Having these documents and revealing this information, it makes you feel born again. It really makes you feel like born again. You've now discovered how sick and cruel this is. It really is like spiritual warfare. Because we're not just fighting against one individual or two individuals or just a group of people. We're fighting against an entity of evil, an entity of darkness. And that's why this is so critical, so important. And for all these people, certain individuals to say it's boring or why are you talking about this? Or let's move on from the Epstein files and talk about, stupid stuff like whether or not Spanish should be allowed at the blah, 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 blah. Is just revealing how gross society is, how dumb our society is, how brainwashed and manipulated, how they turned people's minds into mush. Knowing all this is going on all this time and no one's starting a riot. No one's getting angered by this. The NFL, people are still watching the Super Bowl. I don't know why. I really don't know why at this point. After all this information is getting revealed, after people are finally coming together to point the dots and figure out that, we've been lied to this whole entire time. Not just one person, not just a few people. We've been lied to by so many people this entire time. That's why I get frustrated. But it does give me hope. It gives me certain joy that I'm not the only one commenting on this. So that's what gives me some happiness. That's what keeps me uppity at certain points. Why I'm not the, doom and gloom person that some people have commented on. You're such a black pillar. You're such a Debbie Downer. Why can't you be more happy and full of life? Well, it gives me a bit of life to know that people are waking up to this. I'm not the only one who's crazy. To reveal information, to do their own research, and remind people how sick and cruel these people are. I'm sorry. And the best way to start is not complying with this, not complying with sports. Don't watch TV. Don't watch these sporting entertainment shows. Don't consent to any of this. Don't consent to the pharmaceutical agenda. Don't consent to poisonous chemicals in your food. Don't consent to any of it. All it is taking people understand that you have to peek behind the curtain. You have to do your own research, and then you have to make certain decisions based on that research. That's all it takes. And that's a good start.